Hello everyone. Today's video lesson is on the third chapter of the second unit in the 10th Standard English textbook. It is a song written by Bob Dylan and is called Blowin' in the Wind. The songwriter Bob Dylan, born on 24th May 1941, is an American singer, songwriter, artist and writer. His early songs such as Blowin' in the Wind and The Times They Are A-Changin' became anthems for the American civil rights and anti-war movements. His mid-1960s recordings, supported by rock musicians, climbed the heights of the United States music charts. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature for his contributions to music in 2016. The song Blowin' in the Wind is a song of resistance, a song of protest that raises rhetorical questions about human beings, about the injustices they suffer, about peace, about war, and about freedom. This song has been described as an anthem of the 1960s civil rights movement. Before we go into the detailed analysis of the song, let us take a minute and understand about the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement, also known as the American Civil Rights Movement, was a struggle or fight for social justice that took place mainly during the 1950s and 1960s for the blacks to gain equal rights under the law in the United States of America. It was an organized effort by the Black Americans to put an end to racial discrimination. It began in the late 1940s and ended in the late 1960s. Some of the activists of the movement were Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Dorothy Height, etc. Now that you have an idea of the civil rights movement, let's get back to our song Blowin' in the Wind. I'll just try and sing the song for you. You may join with me by looking at the lines in your textbook or on the screen.
How many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man? How many seas must a white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? Yes, and how many times must the cannonballs fly before they are forever banned? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. Yes, and how many years can a mountain exist before it is washed to the sea? Yes, and how many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free? Yes, and how many times can a man turn his head and pretend that he just doesn't see? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. Yes, and how many times must a man look up before he can see the sky? Yes, and how many years must one man have before he can hear people cry? Yes, and how many deaths will it take till he knows that too many people have died? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
The song has 3 stanzas in total. Let us look at the first stanza in detail. The first 2 lines of the first stanza talks about the belief system that existed at the time that the song was written. In those days, it was believed that, that a boy could become a man only if he took part in wars. Bob Dylan, our songwriter, disagrees with this belief and asks, how many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man? In other words, he is asking how many times a person should fight wars for him to be called a man. Well, that is one interpretation. Another interpretation or explanation of the lines can be as follows. Well, you know that a human life is most often compared to a journey. So if life is a journey, the roads mentioned in the first line of the song may stand for the experiences of life. So here, the songwriter is wondering how many life experiences a person should suffer in order to be called a man. In very simple terms, he is trying to say that the demands that the society puts on a human being is a little too much. Other interpretations include reference to civil rights marches that were popular in the 1960s. The civil rights movement was a non-violent campaign, and so the black Americans who took part in it would go on long marches or long walks as a sign of protest. So the songwriter is asking how many of these walks would it take for the blacks to win what they naturally had a right to. The black Americans were not treated as human beings by the white Americans. Most often, they were treated as animals and as second-class citizens. So Bob Dylan here is asking how long and how much a black American has to suffer and fight before he is treated as a man or a human being. The relevance or importance of this song is that even though it was written in the 1960s, it is a song that speaks for the cause of oppressed people of all times. The past, the present, and the future. In lines 3 and 4 of the first stanza, Dylan raises another rhetorical question. How many seas must a white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? Well, we all know that the white dove is a symbol of peace, of unity, and of harmony. So the songwriter is asking how many of these white doves must sail before world peace is achieved. White doves are released in ceremonies commemorating peace, and the day that no white doves must fly is the day that everybody is in peace. Wars have been a part of human lives from times immemorial. The endless wars have only given us problems and more problems. Children lose their fathers, mothers lose their sons, sisters lose their brothers, and wives lose their husbands. Homes and countries get destroyed and people get displaced. Wars only offer bloodshed and violence. In spite of all these, wars go on happening. So the songwriter is asking us the very important question as to when we will attain peace. When will all these wars stop? How long should a white dove sail or fly before she can find a place of rest and peace? The phrase sleeps in the sand refers to a time when there is no war. This phrase is also used as a reference to the passage in the Bible that describes the incident of Noah, Noah. Noah sending the doves out to find land after the earth got flooded. He sent the doves out to find a place to land and rest. I'll just narrate this story from the Bible in a few words. Once, when God looked down from heaven, he saw that human wickedness had grown so much. It broke the Lord's heart, and he was sorry that he had created human beings. He decided to destroy the entire human race. Not just the human race, he decided to wipe off all life from the earth, even animals and birds. But there was a man named Noah who was a very good and God-fearing man. Because Noah was such a good man, God warned Noah that he was going to destroy the earth by a flood and ordered him to build an ark. An ark is a very, very large boat. Noah was asked to enter the ark with his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives. He was also asked to take into the ark a pair of every kind of animal and every kind of bird. While the ark was being built, Noah warned the people around him about the upcoming flood, but nobody listened to him. When the work of the ark or the large boat was completed, Noah and his family and pairs of animals and birds of each type entered the ark, and the door of the ark was closed by an angel. The rain came down, and it rained continuously for 40 days and 40 nights. The entire earth got flooded, and except for the ones who had entered the ark, everyone else perished or died. Even after the rain stopped, the flood waters covered the earth for 150 days. That is exactly 5 months. You must remember that it had rained for 40 days and 40 nights continuously, and the waters had risen to such a height that even the top of the tallest trees could not be seen. After these 5 months got over, Noah one day opened the window of the ark and released a raven. A raven is a large crow-like bird. The bird flew back and forth until the floodwaters on the earth had dried up. He also released a dove to see if the water had gone down and it could find dry ground. But the dove could find no place to land because the water still covered the ground. So it returned to the boat. After waiting 1 more week, Noah let out the dove again. This time, the dove returned to him in the evening with a fresh olive leaf in its beak. Then Noah understood that the flood was starting to go down. That was the reason why the bird was able to find a leaf. Remember, earlier all the trees had been covered by flood waters. Noah waited yet another week and released or let out the dove once more. This time, the dove did not come back, signifying that it had found dry ground or a place of rest finally. What you have to understand from this story is that the dove was sent out 3 times, and each time it had to fly a long, long way. It had to fly over the flooded waters or seas for a long, long time until it could finally find a place of rest. So let's get back to our song, Blowin' in the Wind, and see what the relevance of sleeping in the sand is and the dove is. Dove here, in the context of the song, is a symbol of freedom and peace and harmony, as I mentioned earlier. Bob Dylan is asking us when we will finally attain peace after all these wars and bloodshed. How long should a white dove fly or sail over the flooded seas of wars and destruction before she can finally rest? This is the question that is asked by the songwriter. In the 5th and 6th lines of the first stanza, the songwriter asks, how many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? We find a direct reference to war here. Cannonballs are usually round and made of iron or steel, which are made to be fired from a cannon. A cannon is an old type of large, heavy gun, usually on wheels, that fires solid metal or stone balls. They were a popular destructive tool of war used in medieval times. So here in the song, cannonballs stand for weapons which are suggestive of wars and conflicts. You must remember that this is also an anti-war song. The songwriter is against wars and he asks how long these weapons will be used before they are totally and forever banned. To ban means to prohibit, to not allow. The songwriter here is trying to say that we have fought enough wars and they should be stopped now. The next 2 lines, which forms the refrain of the song, tells us that the answer to all these questions are blowing in the wind. They are all around us. The answers are waiting to be grabbed. But the problem is that nobody troubles to search for these answers. We have deliberately shut our eyes and ears to the answers which are known to all of us. What do you think the poet or the songwriter is trying to tell us here? We know that wars are a cause of endless violence and destruction, don't we? How can we stop this violence and destruction caused by wars? The answer is simple: stop wars. We know the answer, but do we or the leaders of our nations do anything to stop these wars? No, absolutely nothing. They do nothing at all. So let us move on to the second stanza. The songwriter keeps on asking questions. He asks, how many years can a mountain exist before it is washed to the sea? Here, mountain symbolizes the pride, ego, and strength of those who desire war and those who suppress other people. Bob Dylan asks how long the mighty leaders, the cruel and oppressive rulers, who are as huge and strong as the mountains, will exist in front of more powerful seas of protests of the oppressed people. The mountain represents the unkind, oppressive rulers or leaders of nations, and the sea represents the powerful protests of the oppressed people. No matter how strong, tall, and huge a mountain is, it will one day be washed to the sea. Just like that, the rulers who are as powerful as the mountains will be washed off into the sea of protest of the oppressed people. In the next two lines of the second stanza, there is a direct reference to the discrimination that the black Americans suffered under the whites in America. As I mentioned earlier, the black Americans were treated as second-class citizens in spite of living in a free country. This is the case in almost all so-called free and democratic countries of the world. The poor and underprivileged are treated as animals and are denied their rights. The poet wonders when these people will be able to live freely and not just exist on this earth. The oppressed people don't live in the true sense of the word. They only suffer. That is why the songwriter says that they only exist. And the fifth and sixth lines of the second stanza, the poet or the songwriter asks, how many times can a man turn his head and pretend that he just doesn't see? The man in these lines is not the man that is mentioned in the first stanza. That's something that you have to remember. The man in the first stanza is the representative of people who are denied their rights. But in these lines, in the second stanza, in these lines, the word man is used for people who pretend to be blind, deaf, and dumb. To pretend is to act. When an injustice happens around us, most of us pretend or act as if we are blind and dumb. We don't raise our voices against the injustice. We just turn our heads and walk off. We pretend that we are dumb and we ignore the sufferings of people around us. In other words, we act as if we are blind by not seeing the troubles of our fellow human beings. The songwriter asks us how long we will go on ignoring the discrimination, inequality, and injustice around us. Sometimes even the so-called good men will ignore the sufferings of their underprivileged fellow human beings. The men who pretend to be dumb may also refer to the rulers and leaders of our nations. They just don't bother about the suffering people of their country. The songwriter is waiting for a day when the people, all of them, will raise their voices against discrimination instead of acting like there is no inequality. In the next two lines, Bob Dylan repeats that the answer, like the wind, is all around us. We just need to grab it. In the third stanza of this song, the first two lines of the third stanza, the word sky represents freedom. In fact, sky is the symbol of unlimited freedom. But how many times should a man look up to see the sky? Here, man stands for the man who is denied his rights, like in the first stanza. So how long should a man look up to see the sky? How long can the people of a nation be kept under slavery? How long should these people have to fight to finally see the sky of freedom? When can they be truly free? Here the songwriter refers to the long quest or search of these people for freedom. In the next two lines of the third stanza, the songwriter asks how many years a man should have to listen to the cries of the suffering people. It's not just enough to have ears. We should have a heart and mind to listen to the cries and the problems of people. So here man refers to the man who is a representative of the government and the leaders that remain deaf to the cries and sorrows of the common people. And when they will open their ears to listen to people's plea for justice, for freedom and for peace. Aren't 2 years enough to hear the cries of suffering people? Do they need more years? When will they begin to hear the cry of the poor and the underprivileged ones? In the fifth and sixth lines of the last stanza, the songwriter wonders when the government or the leaders will realize that too many people have already died because of wars. But none of these have mattered to the rulers who announced. None of these questions or none of these problems matter to the rulers who announce wars. So the poet is asking when these people, when these leaders will realize that too many mothers, fathers, husbands, and wives and children have died for no cause. The poet demands that the rulers must respect the rights of the people and bring freedom and peace in the world. Wars should stop, discrimination and injustice should be ended before more people lose their lives. In the final lines of the song, the songwriter again reminds us that the answers are everywhere like the wind. We just have to open our eyes to see it's blowing all around us. Let us quickly look at the figures of speech and poetic devices used in the song. The most important figure of speech used in the song is the rhetorical question. The song contains 9 rhetorical questions, 3 in each stanza. What is a rhetorical question? A rhetorical question is a question asked without expecting an answer. It is asked just for creating an effect or to make a point. The couplet, "The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind," is repeated 3 times in the poem. It is called a refrain. A refrain is a short part of a song or poem that is repeated. The songwriter has also used quite a few symbols in the poem, like roads, white dove, cannonballs, mountain, seas, etc. These are also examples of visual images. The example of alliteration can be seen in the first line. How many roads must a man walk down? Here the mer sound is repeated 3 times at the beginning of words like many, must, and man. The fourth line in the first stanza is another example of alliteration. In the line, before she sleeps in the sand, the sir sound is repeated 2 times in words like sleep and sand. Alliteration is the repetition of consonant sounds at the beginning of 2 or more words in the same line or in nearby lines. So that's all about the song. Hope you enjoyed watching the video. Thank you.